Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today Keith Rosen. Keith is the leading pioneer of management coaching and training. He's the CEO of Profit Builders. He's named one of the best sales training and coaching companies, experts worldwide. Over the last 3 decades, Keith has delivered his programs to hundreds of thousands of salespeople and managers all over the world, on 5 continents and in over 50 countries. You may know him as the author of many award-winning books, coaching salespeople into sales champions, Own Your Day, and his latest game-changing book, Sales Leadership, which I love. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show, Brandon.
So we've got a lot to cover, right? The audience is dying to know your top sales secret to maximize sales. But before that, I'd love to just understand, one, where'd you come from? How'd you get started in sales? And two, you got to share all the things that you learned in sales management, man. I got a lot of questions about sales management because it's hard. So we're going to go into that. But real quickly, man, I'd love to just understand, who's Keith Rosen? How'd you get started in sales? Where'd you come from?
And by the way, how much time do we have for me to impart all my wisdom over 30 years?
Yeah, right? Yeah. Dude, I just need you to take 30 years and put it into 30 minutes.
You got
Super
it.
easy. Super
Not a
easy.
problem. It's sort of like when my clients say, hey, can you transform all of our managers into world-class coaches? Oh, by the way, we'll give you 2 hours.
Yeah, perfect.
It doesn't work that way, right? So real quick, 1,000-foot overview of who I am. Born and raised in New York, traveled a lot when I was younger, went to University of Maryland. First job in college, in high school, was canvassing door to door, then selling B2C, then B2B. Continued to work my way up, built a couple of companies in the remodeling business, in the finance business, in the tech business back then when it was just starting, actually. And here I am 30 years later, and overnight success. Would you believe that, Brandon?
Dude, that's amazing. It sounds like it was a fast 30-year overnight success. What
I don't know how fast it was, maybe looking back now.
I know you said you were canvassing and then you did the tech company and then you've been doing your own management consulting company since. What was the biggest thing you learned selling door to door? And then what was the biggest thing you learned, sales secrets doing the tech company and the remodeling business?
Yeah, it's interesting. 30 years ago to 30 years later, some of the core principles still apply, right? You have to be a master listener, a master proactive, intentional listener. And you have to be insatiably curious. So you're asking the right, deeper, challenging questions. That hasn't changed in 100 years. Inevitably, I find it fascinating that those are still 2 of the least developed skills amongst salespeople and amongst sales leaders.
Wow. So does that mean when you say intentional listening, is that just great discovery or and muting yourself and taking notes? How do you do intentional listening?
Yeah, it's listening with the intent to understand and seek to understand other people's point of view and opinion, rather than listen with the intent to reply with your agenda. And we all walk into every conversation with an agenda. And once we do that, especially with coaching, the coaching will derail and it will absolutely fail. Because if I'm a leader and I have an agenda and I have one of my direct reports come to me and I'm thinking, oh, this is a person who's struggling with their productivity for this quarter, and they come to me looking for help, I'm going to think to myself, okay, I've been in this person's role. I've been successful in their role. I know what they need to do. So, okay, fine, I'll coach them real quick on this. And the manager says to the rep, okay, I'm going to coach you on this. Here we go. I'm putting my coaching hat on. This is what you need to do. Well, that's not coaching. That's being directive. And there is no such thing as directive coaching. It's an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp or an exact estimate or a small crowd. The 2 contradictory words that do not work together. You are either the chief problem solver and the crutch for your team, or you're the coach and the developer of the future leaders of your organization. So when it comes to listening, the other thing about listening is if you're not present, you can't listen. If you're not present in the moment, you can't coach, because coaching is the art of creating new possibilities. Creation only happens in the moment, not in the past, not in the future. When you're engaged in a conversation, that's all that matters. Not what's next, but what's now. And in order to intentionally listen and coach effectively and co-create new possibilities, all of that has to happen in the moment. So the best coaches and leaders and salespeople I know, they lead in the moment. They sell in the moment. They're fully present and engaged, not driving their agenda, but truly to understand what the other person's agenda is, what they're looking for, and what value means to them.
Wow. Yeah, that was a lot right there. A lot to digest. So if you're a new in sales management, like for me, for example, I want to 10x the growth of our sales team and our business. And I was telling you a little bit about that before we jumped on the call.
And it looks like you're on the path, my friend.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting there, not fast enough, right? But that's probably how everyone feels. Where do I start? I've got a team of 10, 20, 50 reps. Like here at Seamless, I've got a team of 15 right now. I want to grow it to 100 and build the next Salesforce.com. And I don't know the sales leadership, the sales management principles that I need to get into place, which you cover in sales leadership and coaching salespeople into sales champions. Like, where are the best places to start building the architecture, the strategy?
Yeah. So when I wrote Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions, that was actually 10 years ago. It was published in 2008. And that was 20 years of my data dump, of my brain dump, of all the experiences I had to date around coaching, because there was no other coaching book out there. There was no framework. There was no, where do I go to learn how to coach? You can read all these great leadership books, but they're all theoretically based.
Your book was the first book I picked up on coaching.
Yeah.
When I started years ago, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, I remember picking it up and I read it and I'm like, damn, this is fire.
And we're going to keep igniting that fuse. So, so I dumped all that in there, and I got really good feedback from leaders saying, Keith, there's some great management books out there, but when I shut the book, I don't know what to do. There's no path. There's no execution. There's no, here's how you coach. Here are the questions you ask. Here's the framework. Here are the talk tracks, or what I call coach tracks, when you're having the critical conversations. So I dumped all that in Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions. Well, 10 years later, when I wrote Sales Leadership, that was a culmination of 75 countries and working in dozens and dozens and dozens of top global sales organizations, tens of thousands of managers across the world. And that reinforced to me that coaching is truly the universal language of learning, of development, and of change. And that's where it started. So with sales leadership, the big difference between that and my last book is sales leadership is a chronological path. And this is to your point. Where do I start? Okay. What's the mindset?
Yeah.
What's the skill set? And what's the strategy? What's the path that I need to implement a sustainable coaching program, which will in turn develop a thriving, top performing coaching culture? It starts in chapter 1, and it takes the manager and the leaders all the way through the end of the book on what they need to do and who they need to be to create a thriving culture. So chapter 1 is all about what's your company's DNA? What's your company's ecosystem? Is your company even ready to be at that point to make this amazing transformation from a result-driven, fear-based culture and metrics-driven?
Shit. We do so many metrics, and it sounds like we're probably leveraging that fear-based strategy. I don't want to leverage it, but
busy, right?
Yeah, damn it. We've got like 30 Salesforce dashboards that were just done. So you're saying like a lot of the companies like us, we're leveraging this metrics, like, hey, you need to improve this, you need to make more calls, you need to book more meetings, like moving from that to where's the ideal state, which you cover in the book?
Yeah. So real quickly, you don't coach the result. You coach the process. And managers get so stuck on the result. Why? Because they got a target on their back, and so do their salespeople. And I'm not saying you don't need those metrics and reports and scorecards and KPIs. Those are important. You need to know what you're driving towards. You need to know what results you're looking to attain. I'm not disputing that. However, once they're set, here's a secret. They're not going anywhere. They're set. The quota's set. The KPIs are set. And managers think coaching is running around to their team, reminding their people, hey, you know about your quota. You know, you got to get that scorecard on the greener side here. Hey, you know about the number of calls you have to make today. You know how many appointments you need to make, right? And managers think that's motivating their team. Your people are smart. What they're thinking about their manager is, my manager is just bloody annoying. I know my goals. They don't need to keep reminding me of my goals. What I need help on is the process, the who, the how, the why. So managers, their typical communication model is, okay, tell me what's going on, and then here's what you need to do. Look what they're missing. They're missing the whole coaching moment right there. Seeking to understand other people's point of view. What's the why? What's the root cause that's actually putting this person in the situation in the first place? Good and bad. And that's where managers, if they're not taking the time to seek out that why, they're making the costly assumptions of the facts rather than assessing them to really validate what's really going on.
And when you say oh, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just speaking to a manager the other day, and they were telling me, they said, Keith, I was at this conference, and in the conference, I was paired up with this other person who I never met in my life, and I had to coach them. And I knew nothing about this person. So all I had were questions. And it really reinforces the point that managers need to realize that in some ways, the fact that you are the subject matter expert inadvertently creates the very problems you're looking to avoid, because you know the other person's role. Chances are, if you're a sales leader, you were probably a successful salesperson and an independent contributor. So you're going into a conversation, person's going to say, hey, here's my challenge. Manager's going to say, well, I dealt with that before. Here's what you should do. And what they wind up doing is coaching in their own image, building mini-me's and building robots. And they're not tapping into people's individuality. And if they're not even doing that, there is no way you can even begin to create a coaching culture, because a coaching culture is a people culture. It's not a results culture. The result is always the byproduct. So I loved when this manager was sharing me this story, because it shows how when you know so much about the other person's role, you have tendency not to ask the questions. You have tendency to assume more of the facts. And that's when you start treating symptoms rather than root cause. And you wind up having those redundant, repetitive conversations with people.
Wow, that's great. So when you see, to not create the robots, not create the mini-me's, when you see like the dashboards, right? Because I'm doing this right now. And I'm looking at meetings booked, meetings held, calls, emails, social touches. Let's just say, the meetings booked are down, or the calls and emails activity is down.
Oh no, Brandon, you mean we have to look at the spreadsheet and figure out why? Okay.
Yeah.
All those spreadsheet jockeys out there, I know you're watching. I see you. Okay. I got a hidden camera behind your desk there. Yep. I'm talking to you. So
yeah, how do you define that how, or so you're not just saying, hey, you need to improve. This is how it was for me at IBM, when I was selling at IBM, and it was the opposite at Google. We would try to solve problems together selling for Google, but at IBM, it was like KPI, with no strategy, no results, no coaching. You need to improve, and it's like, that doesn't do anything. Tell me, when you see that, how do you figure out the why or the how, that gap that you were saying?
Again, shattering a myth. You are not going to find out where someone's gaps are and weaknesses are and coaching moments and opportunities to shift their mindset in a healthier way of thinking and being by looking at a spreadsheet. Now, again, we need the data. The data is important. However, data doesn't uncover the gaps. So let me give you a perfect example. The data is going to show what's going on. So let's say you have your A player and your C player, and you're looking at your monthly spreadsheet, your monthly report. And you're looking at activity, because that's what reports show, activity and results. And
Yeah.
you're looking at the A player and you're looking at the C player, and you're looking and you see, wait a second, my C player is engaging in the exact same activities, in the exact same amount of calls as my A player. They have the same amount of meetings. They make the same amount of calls every day. They're doing their pipeline review and forecast review. Why are they my C player and why is my A player my A player? Because great salespeople and great sales leaders don't always do different things. They do things differently. And if the manager is not observing their people during a meeting, on the phone, face-to-face with clients, peers, how they deal with upsets. Let me be exceedingly clear. You have no clue what your people are doing. You are not going to find out what's going on in a spreadsheet. You need to observe them, listen, and then from there, seek out the gaps and find where the gaps are to support them. After all, why is a sport coach on the sidelines? Because players can't self-diagnose when they're in the middle of the game. They're playing to win. They're not self-diagnosing at the same time, but so are your salespeople. And for managers of managers, so are your managers. They're playing to win. You need that other set of eyes and ears looking in and listening in for those gaps, because people can't change what they don't see.
Wow, I love that. And that's why it's so critical to sit on the sideline and watch the pitches, watch the calls, watch the emails, like literally shadow your reps.
And that's where you're going to uncover. Now I see it. Is it a skill gap? Is it a will gap? Is it a gap in their thinking? Are they making too many assumptions? Are they not asking the right questions? Are they cutting the customer off? Are they even listening? No spreadsheet is going to tell you that.
No, not at all. Shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave this podcast and this book interview, and I'm going to immediately tell all my sales management, like, you guys got to be on 10x more meetings and shadowing, following these guys. How do you turn every call, every pitch, like every conversation into a coaching conversation, like to be productive?
Yeah, well, actually, we're kind of moving into the big secret here. The secret.
Uh-oh.
You want me to lay it on you now, Brandon?
Hold on. No, let's save it for a quick minute. We'll get that. Let's switch up the question then. What's the fastest way to go from bad coaching to amazing coaching and sales leadership?
Number one, seek out a coach who's been where you've been before. Okay.
Like a mentor?
Well, you could seek out a mentor, but just because they're a great mentor doesn't mean they're a great coach. Okay. There's a slight distinction between mentoring and coaching. Mentoring is more about, I work for an organization. I really, really love my boss's boss. And one day I want to be in their position. So I might seek that person out and ask them, hey, listen, I would love to continue to grow the company. I see myself here for a long time, and I would love to do what you do. Would you be open to mentoring me? And that person would help that person, really supporting them, helping build their brand, their internal brand, and really helping them step over the river on the rocks so they don't get their feet wet. That's a mentor. Doesn't mean they're a great coach. They could be a great advisor. They could be a great subject matter expert. But when you take mentoring now and you combine that with coaching, which is the art of creating new possibilities, now you're exponentially making a deeper impact on every single person and in every single conversation. So what do managers need to do? They need to be coached. They need to be trained how to coach. And as much as you might think, Keith, are you trying not to sell your book? This is not going to make you a world-class coach. The content in it will, the execution in it will, but you need to execute. You can't just read the book and say, okay, I'm a great coach. Who's going to support you? Who's going to hold you accountable? What framework are you going to use? Are you going to consistently use the LEADS framework that I talk about? Are you going to leverage your peers and ask for peer-to-peer coaching and have them observe you coach? That's what's going to make an exemplary leader, and that's what's going to accelerate the growth of any manager to transcend and transform into that world-class leader and coach they want to be.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know in the book you talk a lot of, consultative, challenger selling is big. You know, what is consultative sales coaching in your point of view, which you cover a lot in sales leadership? And like, I know I want to apply like consultative sales coaching and like not creating mini-me's. Like you said, like you talk a lot about like you're creating mini-me robots and you need to figure out a better, smarter way to coach and manage sales leaders. What is consultative sales coaching and how can I start applying that today with my team?
So are we speaking from the salesperson, because we may need to hold that until later, or I have to say from the manager's point of view?
Manager's point of view is what I was saying.
From the manager's point of view, what does that look like when they're working with their reps?
Yes. Yep. You got it. Managing their reps, working with their reps, trying to improve the performance of their reps.
Well, let's first talk about what they need to stop doing. And what they need to stop doing is shoulding all over their people and shoulding all over themselves. And just in case I'm not being clear with that, it's SHOULDING, because a should is really the excrement of your own agenda, or it's making you or someone else wrong. So here's what managers often do. If they're even observing their people during a client-faced meeting or over the phone listening, after that meeting or after that phone call, the manager would look at that salesperson and say, well, here's what I noticed and here's what you should do. And immediately they should on people based on, hey, this is what worked for me, so this is going to work for you as well. That's the problem of you're not tapping into people's individuality. And now what you're doing is you're creating dependency. I've never met a manager who doesn't want a team of independent, accountable salespeople, critical thinkers, critical questioners. But yet the manager is creating the very culture they want to avoid. Every single time they keep giving out questions, every time they give out answers rather than the questions, they're teaching their people, hey, I'll always solve the problems for you. So they're creating the dependency. And the real irony is this: rather than the coach, they become the crutch. So when they take on that other person's problem, now it's their problem. And when they give a solution out to their direct reports and that solution doesn't work, well, whose fault is that? Now the person gets to come back and say, hey, boss, my hands are clean on this. You told me what to do. It didn't work. It's not my fault. It's yours. And now we've successfully robbed people of the very accountability we're desperately trying to instill on our team and with our culture. So what's the better way to do it? The better way is leading with questions rather than leading with answers. There are certain mantras that I share, and that's a real powerful one, because if you're leading with questions, it's showing people that you care. If you're being present.
I love that. I love that micro secret. Lead with questions because it shows people you care.
Yeah, and what managers, it's interesting, and to build off your point, managers think they're doing their people a favor when they're giving them the answer. And of course there's a time and a place for that. But what they also don't realize is their people, when they get that answer, there are some direct reports that are leaving that conversation thinking, I guess my manager doesn't trust me enough for me to do my job. I guess they don't have the faith in my skills that they have to tell me what to do. And that inadvertently erodes the very confidence and trust, again, managers desperately try to create. It's almost insanity if you think about it.
Yeah. Wow. Huh. So asking great questions and not just bringing your idea, your thoughts, your experiences onto the rep.
And we really need to hold on to this, because this is something managers really struggle with, because so many times they say, Keith, okay, do I ask them just questions or do I tell them what to do? Because if I just ask them questions, I'm going to lose patience. They're going to lose patience. And what happens if they don't get it? So can I just tell them what to do? Well, you're either the coach or the chief problem solver. Choose. What managers don't realize is you're going to get in the weeds, and your coaching is going to fail if you don't have a framework to follow and a series of chronological questions that's going to guide the conversation, not to your agenda, but to create a new and better possibility for that other person. So where managers get stuck is like, Keith, I feel like I'm killing people with questions. I'm just asking them questions and they're getting frustrated and I'm getting frustrated. And then the coaching just stops. So I just tell them what to do. Well, managers, you need to look in the mirror and say, if you're having that experience, chances are you're not coaching. you're doing something else. So to build off your point, the same model of seeking to understand other people's point of view and seeking to understand their opinions, the same holds true when you're doing observation and feedback. There's a reason why people push back from hearing feedback from their peers or their boss. Number one, setting intentions. And this goes back to your point of where do you start? If you're not setting intentions and letting your people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's in it for them, you'll always experience pushback. And that's where it even starts when you're rolling out a coaching initiative. You need to set intentions, especially if you were the chief problem solver yesterday and now you want to be that coach. You better let your people know something's changing, because if you don't prepare people for change and they see something changed, the default file is always going to be fear.
How do you prepare people for change?
Through the art of enrollment, which I spend so much time talking about and giving managers these talk tracks. It's interesting. Over the last 30 years, I would probably say one of the most common topics that I work on with leaders is, Keith, what do I say when? How do I handle this situation?
Like the if this, then that statement. Yeah, if this, then do that.
Yeah, if I'm dealing with this underperformer, this was the last conversation I had, but I don't think throwing them on a personal, improvement plan was really the best idea. It really didn't work very well, that performance improvement plan. So they're seeking out, what they don't realize is they're seeking out learning a new language because the way they're communicating isn't working. And here's another little nugget is when you change the conversation, you change the outcome. So enrollment and coaching is the language of leadership. So if I am approaching someone and I want to observe them, I can't just pull my chair next to their desk and just say, hey, what's going on? Don't mind me. I'm just going to observe you make some calls. You're going to freak people out.
Right.
You're literally going to freak them out. Okay. Yeah. Because they have no idea what your intention is. Lead with intent, and people need to understand, so if I do this for business, I'm going to get this and achieve my personal goals. When you can align those, that's when you're speaking the language of leadership. And that's what the greatest leaders in the world do. They're able to enroll people in their ideas, bigger ideas, often bigger than them, like world peace or eradicating hunger or equality. These are things that millions of people want to be part of, but that's enrollment. And now what we're doing is we're taking it down to in the business space. And as a leader, to create that alignment and buy-in. Once you do that, once people know your intentions, the coaching will work exceedingly well, especially when the manager is also seeking out coaching from their direct reports.
And you said enrolling, activating them, is it asking them a lot of questions on how to accomplish the mission?
So once you have enrollment and buy-in, as to example, observation.
I want to 10x sales.
Right. And so you could tell your people,
give me some examples.
Here's what you need to do to 10x. Here's what you need to do. Or you could observe them and you could ask them, so, just in pure coaching form, seek to understand. How do you think that call went? What do you think you did well? Where do you feel you got stuck? What, if anything, would you want to improve? What, if anything, would you change or do differently the next time? So now you know what they know and you know what they missed. That's their blind spot. Now the manager fills in what they saw that person missed, because people can change what they don't see. That's where you're going to exponentially accelerate growth, because now the manager is seeing spot on exactly what's getting in this person's way. And it could just be, I noticed that when you started qualifying, you never set the expectations of the meeting. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I did that. Or, I noticed that when you were in a conversation and you heard the objection about price, you automatically went into defense mode rather than going deeper to seek to understand what's behind that objection of price, what's really going on. Those little things, oh my God, I didn't even realize I did or didn't do that. That's where you're going to move the needle exponentially on productivity and sales.
I love that. And it sounds like asking them those questions on replaying how they thought they did on the sales pitch, sales call. I love that, you don't know, you can't provide advice if you don't know what they think, figuring out what they know and then what and where that gap is to fill it in so that they can improve.
And then managers wonder why when they're having a conversation and giving out advice, the person says, oh, I know that. No, I know that already. I'm sure no one watching this has ever been in that type of conversation. Sarcasm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Gosh, I keep like sitting back and thinking because there's just so many things that I have to apply and change here at Seamless, which I'm excited for. But, last question before we get into your top sales secret.
I've been holding it back.
I know, dude. I'm dying. I'm dying to go over it. What are like? We try to. Why is it so hard for managers to let a lot of these things go? Like, we're looking at the metrics. Everyone's just looking at the metrics. Like, no one's really like. It's hard to sit in on every sales call, to sit in on pitches, to shadow, to ask the tough questions of your reps. Like, that takes a shitload of work.
Well, it's especially hard when managers don't put it in their calendar, because if you don't have the appointment, you don't have the commitment. And managers think coaching is this event thing that you do to people. No, it's not. Let's go back to what we talked about. In the most simplistic form, coaching is a language. You're learning the language of coaching. When managers come to me and they are challenged with all these, critical conversations, we just create the coaching track, which is enrollment, to get the person open to have that conversation and be open to the coaching that would follow. When you do that, now there's no such thing as a difficult conversation. And yes, back to the numbers. Of course, we need to look at the numbers. We need to focus on where we want to get to. But managers need to put that time in their calendar, because there is nothing more important than spending their time with their people. And I've had many leaders from world-class organizations tell their people, listen, if you're not spending 70% of your time coaching your people and developing them and observing them, you're not doing your job. Wow. I had another manager literally a month ago, and I'm not going to say their name as much as I think they're one of the best leaders I've ever met. Manager, and this was a senior worldwide global head of sales in a meeting with his VPs, the VP's directors, the director's frontline sales managers. And in front of his entire leadership team, he asked them, he said, how many times do you guys look at the spreadsheets and look at the reports? And as you can imagine, what do you think you heard?
All the time, right?
All the time.
24/7.
You know what he said? I look at them once a month. Once a month. And they are crushing it. Why? Because this leader knows magic isn't happening looking at a report. Magic is happening out there working with your people and working with your customers.
Damn. Is that like if you had to rank in order of priority the one thing you could do to maximize sales success, which probably will lead into your secret, but for managers, new and legacy sales managers, like, is the number one thing like to start shadowing and following and meeting with your people to see what's going on?
Yeah, it starts with, number one, and as much as in my book, I say, this is how you do it. This is the first conversation you're going to have with your people. Here's the coaching model you're going to use. Here's the talk track. I mean, I give them everything verbatim, word for word, and it works globally because I've tried it globally. And I've heard managers tell me this stuff works. Doesn't matter what culture you work in, company-wise or whatever, wherever you live geographically, this stuff is universal.
Awesome. Wow. So that's great. And this is in the sales leadership book, correct?
Yes. So if they want it, for every manager that is looking at a tough conversation and they don't know where to go, rather than put your head in the sand and hope it goes away, and we all know hope is not a strategy, pick up the book, open the book. There's templates and coach tracks on how do you turn around an underperformer? How do you deal with a top performer who's toxic? How do you create alignment around coaching? How do you create alignment around change? How do you enroll your peers in coaching? How do you, as a direct report, enroll your boss in coaching so you can coach up? How do you break down departmental silos so everyone can truly work as a cohesive team towards the same unified vision? What company doesn't want that? So, when you're looking at the measurable, how do you know if you have a coaching culture? You know if you have a coaching culture if the manager is spending most of their time developing their people and not running around reactionary, putting out fires all the time. Your level of retention increases. Your attrition is probably around 3%. I was speaking to another company. They were excited because it went down from 30 to 20%. Shocker, their managers aren't coaching. If your people are achieving their goals, not the 80-20 rule, okay? And that's an excuse. If you have 20% of your people generating 80% of the revenue, then what are you doing with the underperformers? How are you supporting them?
Damn.
And if everyone comes to work happy and there's a trusting culture where everyone is coaching each other, manager coaching manager, manager coaching direct coaching each other, salespeople to salespeople coaching up to their manager, that's when you know you have a healthy culture of coaching.
That's awesome. And last question before we get into it, just because I'm dying to know, and I'm sure the audience, do you invest your time coaching the top players the most or the bottom players the most?
So you're saying you just want me to answer that in a minute, huh, Brandon?
Yeah,
that's a terrible question, man. That's terrible. How much time? We need 30 minutes for that one,
dude. I mean, all right,
I'm gonna lay it on you about a minute.
Yeah, lay it on me. Try the Cliff Note version.
Okay, for the 1,000-foot version, even though it's 3 chapters in there. When you're dealing with the underperformer, okay, step 1. Why are they an underperformer? Have you been looking at the spreadsheet or have you been coaching them consistently? Okay, so we could talk about how to turn around an underperformer, and we could talk about my 4-week intensive turnaround coaching strategy where the person after 4 weeks actually looks in the mirror and self-selects and winds up either firing themselves or hiring themselves. But the real fact is, if the manager is coaching consistently and honoring the ABCs of leadership, always be coaching, they wouldn't be in these situations in the first place. I mean, come on. Why do you think you have an underperformer? Okay, are you going to sit and get mad at that person? How dare any manager get mad at their underperformers? Because at the end of the day, it's always the manager's fault. And that to me is the good news, because it's in every leader's power to change. So you could wait until the you-know-what hits the fan. By that time, you already missed the coaching moment. And I guarantee you weren't honoring those ABCs of coaching.
Wow. Love it. So ABC, always be coaching.
Always pipeline review, deal review, forecast review, customers, peers, during a meeting. It's just a language. It's the way you've chosen to engage differently at a deeper level with people, authentically and with vulnerability, and not vulnerability as in putting yourself in harm's way, but vulnerability as in shifting away from trying to be that perfect manager to being human. And you even said earlier, what gets in the way of managers trying to be great coaches and letting go? It's because they're all control freak perfectionists. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah, I know I'm one.
I'm not going to get emails saying, "Oh, Keith, how dare you accuse that of me?" I'm going to get an email saying, "Keith, you're right. We are."
Yeah.
So, but think about what the root cause is: fear. They're afraid to let go. Oh my God, I'm going to lose control. Oh my God, I'm not going to perform. Well, if you're looking to control your entire organization, then you might as well fire all your people and do their job. And the fact is, the universal law, there's only 3 things in life you can control. It's your actions, it's your reactions, and it's your attitude. Okay?
Actions, reactions, and attitude.
That's it. Everything else is an illusion. And I find it so fascinating that leaders and salespeople and anyone in life, we try to spend more time trying to control the things we can't than mastering the things we can. Imagine if every day you're focused on, okay, not what do I need to do to hit my number, which is the wrong questions that managers ask themselves every morning. The right question is, what do I need to do today to make my people more valuable than they were yesterday? In skill, in will, in attitude, in messaging, in their brand, and how they communicate.
Damn. That's a great segue into our last and final most important question. Sales secrets from the top 1%. Keith Rosen, if you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling to maximize your sales success, what is your top sales secret? And we're going to cover the what, why, And then how can the audience execute it today to make a lot more money tomorrow?
Okay, you're going to have to guide me on that and coach me on those questions, okay?
I'll try, dude. I'll try.
One question at a time when you're coaching everyone. Don't double dip.
Yeah, exactly. So what if you had to go back in time to when you first started selling, what would your top sales secret be to help you maximize your sales success?
It's interesting. The short answer is I wish I knew how to coach then, because I always, when I was managing 50 plus salespeople, I always felt there was something off with the sales process, pitching or showing up and throwing up, or just doing the data dump. That's not selling. Okay. Trying to overcome objections. That's not selling. Manipulation. That's not selling. So, I started creating my own sales model. And before I knew it, my sales model looked very similar to my coaching model. So if you want the secret to sales, the secret is this, and this is the future. And the clients that have started to doing this have already noticed a massive competitive edge. The future of selling is salespeople transforming into world-class coaches.
Wow.
Forgetting about being a better salesperson, be a better sales coach so you can coach your customers to succeed. That's the future of selling. And that's where the greatest salespeople realize. Because the managers, when they're going through my program, they'll say, Keith, everything we're talking about here pretty much applies to sales. And I say, yeah. Now imagine if all your salespeople were in this course and they all learned how to coach following the same framework you do, the same mindset of what it means to be a universal sales leader. They have the communication talk tracks. You have a universal model and definition of what coaching is. They learn how to coach. Well, guess what? Now they're coaching you and you're coaching them. They're coaching their customers. What happens now when that salesperson is ready for their promotion? Congratulations. You've just prepared your salespeople for their next role and doing what leaders do, which is develop the future leaders of the organization. And when salespeople know how to coach their customers, not only do customers absolutely love it and it's such a breath of fresh air for them, because it really shows, again, coaching is caring. It doesn't matter who you're coaching, but it builds that long-term trust. And that's how you shift a culture. When everyone is coaching each other, that's when a coaching culture emerges, because a coaching culture is a people culture. So if you want the secret to sales success, shift from being a salesperson to being a consultative sales coach.
Wow. And then, the immediate steps to start doing that today or tomorrow, to become that transformative, consultative sales person, sales coach, to not only your team, to your managers, to the people that you manage, but to your customers. How can we apply that today? Where would someone start?
I could drop a few nuggets that people can use immediately, but I need to sleep well. So of course the disclaimer is, every single person, just like every single athlete, the top athletes in the world, were trained and coached on the game. First, they were trained, baseline, best practices, all trained the same way. Then they're coached to refine their game so they could be the best they could be. And coaching never stops. So the first thing is, get yourself a coach, put yourself through a coach training program so that you can learn the foundation of coaching, not just reading it from, a fantastic book that might be behind me right here. But the second thing is, after you have that foundation and you have the support and the best practices and you're out there coaching, what is the first thing you can do? The first thing you can do as a manager is let your people know what you're going to try to do. And that's where that vulnerability and transparency starts. So if you were one of my direct reports and, I read this book or I had this epiphany that I know that for me to be the best leader and truly move the needle of productivity, the best way to do that is to be a great coach. Well, I have to prepare my people for that. So step one, enroll your people in coaching. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what's in it for you. Hey, you know what?
I love that.
I learned
why, and what's in it for you.
That's the model. What do most managers do? Here's what we're doing. And then there are people say, well, why? And the manager says, because I told you to. There's no buy-in and enrollment. And the managers can play the power card all day long. But imagine what happens if people understand what's in it for them. Now, exponentially, they're going to be so much more vested into create that result and collaborate in order to achieve it.
Wow. Become transformative sales, consultative salespeople managers, right? You had a good title for that chapter that we'll use. You know, when it comes to where can people follow you, Keith, find, subscribe, get all of this great sales management advice, tips, secrets for
you can always
after the show?
Jump on my website, keithrosen.com. Feel free to ping me anytime if you have any questions. My email, I'll give it out, but please, everyone, don't tell anyone. It's keithr@keithrosen.com. That's my personal email. Just please keep that to yourself. I'm here to support you unconditionally. And if you need me, please feel free to reach out anytime.
That's awesome. Well, Keith, thank you so much for the sales secrets. Any other last pieces of advice before we close the show?
Oh, wow. How much
we went through a lot.
How much more time do we have? Let's see. Well, how about this? People create the mindset. Mindset shapes behavior. Behavior defines culture, and culture determines success. So what is the primary objective of every organization? What is the primary objective of every leader? To make your people more valuable.
Wow. With that, guys, audience, you got to go pick up Sales Leadership, Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions. It's on Keith Rosen's website. You could also get it on Amazon, right? And the different bookstores, although I haven't walked into a bookstore in a minute. So, thank you so much, Keith, for taking the time today to coach us on coaching and to not just be dashboard robot creating mini-me's. I truly appreciate it. I gotta reread these books again, man, because I read them and then I apply it and then I feel like I go back to the old ways and it's hard to not do that. It's hard
Brian,
to not.
Wait, Brian, when did you call me for a coaching session?
Gosh,
let's set it up, man.
Unbelievable.
Get on my calendar. Let's do some coaching. That's the
Seriously.
Next live version.
Yeah, we got to do that live. I'm going to have Keith beat my ass on sales coaching, and you guys could see it live. But thank you, audience, for tuning in to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Listen, read Keith's chapter at secretsalesbook.com. Order a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com and listen to the iTunes, podcast, Spotify, wherever we can stream this thing. Hopefully LinkedIn Live soon at secretsalesbook.com. Thank you, everyone, and make it a great year. Make it a great day, week, month, quarter. Let's go. Make it happen. Talk soon. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.